Welcome to Triumph and Disaster, a show dedicated to manly creativity and culture. Brought to you by your host, Cameron McHarg.
Hey guys, how's it going? So this week we have Curtis Nelson, who is the actor and producer of a Harley Davidson commercial that I recently directed that I'm very proud of. It turned out pretty much exactly the way that I'd hoped for, which is rare, which is a rare thing. Usually, things go wrong and, you have to deal with different catastrophes, and this was great. And so Curtis and I actually go back a long time. We met when we were both, I was fresh off the bus. He had been here a little bit longer than me, but we met at Warner Brothers a million years ago, not long, maybe probably like a year after 9/11 or something, when they were hiring a lot of security guys there. And we were younger, new actors just trying to get a gig that would be somehow involved in some way. And we've kept in touch ever since. And so we made this commercial, and I went over to his place, and he stoked up this cool fire in his backyard and broke out some nice old scotch, and it was great. But as a result of that, I forgot a bunch of names and stuff that I brought up. Like, I was trying to think of John Cazale, who's one of my favorite actors, and for some reason I was calling him Sal. That's Scotch. So I couldn't think of his name. And I couldn't think of Richard Farnsworth's name, who's this actor who played the older guy in the Straight Story, and he'd been around for a while. He was like a stuntman turned actor. So I spaced it on a couple things, but I'm going to put everything up on the blog, triumphanddisasterblog.com. And had a really good talk. Had a really, really good talk. And hope you enjoy it. This is Curtis Nelson. Curtis, we've known each other a long time. So you guys can't see what's going on right now, but we're in Curtis's backyard by this nice fire with glasses of scotch. Couldn't be a better environment.
A Macallan.
I don't think we'll have any ghetto birds or motorcycles or shit like that. We've had another. This might be my actual first quiet episode. So yeah, man, we've. Let me take a sip of this real quick.
Good stuff. 10 years.
It's the best way to start a talk. Is it 10 years?
Yeah,
that is really good. Damn.
Yeah, it's nice.
We've known each other a long time, dude.
It's funny how long we've known each other now. We've known each other probably about, going on 12 years now, it seems.
Something like
probably.
that.
Look at that.
It's from, so we, way back in the day, this is like right after 9/11, at least it was for me. Is that when you started there?
Mm-hmm. Right in there.
We started, we're both actors, and we were both, it was easy to get a security job at that time at the studios, at Warner Brothers Studios. So us and probably a bunch of other like-minded people got jobs, not really for the job, but to try to weasel our way in there.
Not weasel our way in. I genuinely, I'm a huge fan of movies. I've always loved movies. So, one of the most fascinating things about me being there, and, well, number one, being able to hang out and talk with people like yourself. We had 12 hours to kill in a box, a 4x5 box. But the other cool thing was you actually got to go around and you got to see these sets progress and build. So like when a new movie came into town or something like that, and they had something like 3 stages, you got to see kind of the movie magic kind of build itself.
It is crazy, right?
And
so The Last Samurai was a good example.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. I got there right after Last Samurai.
Just
were you already there?
Huge fortress and shit. Yeah.
But when you imagine it and you see the photos of it, you're like, incredible how they did this all backstage and on the lot just behind stage 24 and 25, I think it was, right over there on the back lot, where they would always shoot Lois and Clark and things like that. So, silly TV shows, but then going out there and you just go, man, that is movie magic. And it's like, 2 blocks away from the Blade Runner stages where they did all the Blade Runner stuff.
That all the time when I'd walk around there like, this is where this happened. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
if you're a real movie geek, like you will find out. If you don't know yet, we both are pretty hardcore movie dorks. But I remember there were a lot of places where I'd wander around and just kind of dork out, or just you'd go on stage. Remember Solaris, the Steven Soderbergh version?
For sure.
So you'd go on the stage and you'd be on and just walking around on the spaceship, and you're like, wow. Shit, George Clooney's going to be shooting here in a few hours. and you just like, fuck, I
Right.
wish I was doing this.
Right. Well, there was another thing too. It's like, you would see stuff like the pre-production stuff that was really cool too, or you got to see things in development. And because I worked graveyard, I would get to see a lot of cool things that nobody else got to see.
Mm-hmm.
So like when they were redoing I Am Legend, or when they were going to make I Am Legend, at one point Ridley Scott was supposed to do it in the 90s, and he had all these previs drawings and all this other stuff.
Arnold, I think.
It was possibly Arnold, but I don't know if they'd ever really kind of figured out who it was going to be. But it was,
anyway.
And I forget the guy that wrote it. I always mispronounce his name. I think it was Mark Petrovich or something like that. I mean, but he was the writer of it, and so I had read the screenplay because I work in a graveyard, and then I would also see all this previs stuff that was so cool, and you're like, oh wow, this is stuff that Ridley Scott passed and said, I like this. This is what we're going to do. And this is how the vampires are going to look. This is how and it's really neat to see all that previous stuff, how the city was going to look, how the space was going to be. And it was like really cool.
And did you, cause I know we both did kind of similar things. And I remember like, a couple things first of all, just a couple years prior before 9/11, I used to sneak in. I don't know when you got to LA, but I got here in the late 90s.
I got here in 93.
Okay, so you're the clear before that happened,
sure.
And you could sneak in. Like I used to take, this is back when you had phones that you had the little antenna you pulled out.
Right.
So to try to look like I was some kind of, I don't know, whatever agent or something, I had like a leather portfolio thing. It was actually full of headshots, 10x8 black and white headshots, probably. And this phone with the antenna pulled out, and I pull out this phone with this antenna, and I act like I was talking, like I knew where I was going, and I just walk right past the security guys.
For sure.
Everything changed after that.
It's
like Fort Knox now, but yeah. So when I worked there, I would, and we weren't supposed to do this, but I'd go around and lay my headshots on all the casting directors, boxes and shit, and all. I
did it only a couple of times. I'm kind of a dork that way too, because I'm just like, I don't want to bug these people or something like that. And this. I'll have a story I have to tell you off air.
Okay.
Because it was.
You're killing everybody. Can you give some kind of a mild version of it, or no?
It was a direct. I know names, but it was a director, and I put it on there, and I wrote just a little letter about who I was and why I had a passion to be on the project, and all that stuff. Whatever you're trying to do to sell yourself to the person, and it's the weirdest thing for me to do, being who I am and stuff. So it was strange anyway, but I know there's no opportunities, that are kind of handed to you. So I was just like, and since they didn't know I did graveyard shift, and they thought I just mailed it in general mail, because I just put it in the general mail. I didn't go and put it on somebody's desk and address it to them and stuff like that.
Yeah, you put it in their box somewhere.
And the next day, I saw it on the wall, pinned, with all the production photos, and it had on marker on front of my headshot said, "Will you marry me?"
Oh no! What are you supposed to take of that?
I was like, oh god, they were just probably having a good old time in the office.
Could have been worse.
Oh look at this guy. Look, he wants to be on the movie. Oh, he's so handsome. And the director was known for those things.
That's cool.
Anyway,
that's pretty funny actually. I remember. And one time, one of the inspirations, one of the guys, and we're going to get into this, but one of the guys who was sort of the inspiration for this whole podcast, for the whole blog, the whole show, everything, is John Milius.
Right.
Because, this whole thing was about, this whole show was, the original idea was, about guys like him and Peckinpah and
he's greedy.
Guys that you don't see very often anymore. Guys, and not just movies, but movies definitely, in everything.
They were like that in their own life as well.
The real thing.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, somebody like John Milius was more of a fan, I think, and looked up to this Peckinpahs and the John Fords, and those were people that were tested through fire. A lot of these guys some of them were military journalists and things like that, and that's where they learned the filmmaking or how to develop it. Yeah,
like
or
Samuel
in the military.
Fuller or
and
Lee Marvin.
Right,
I mean, the list goes on.
But as far as like directors and things like that, these guys, a lot of directors in the old days were just blue collar dudes. It wasn't looked at as this artistic thing that you had to be a certain type of a person, and have your hat and point that way whenever the camera comes your way and shows you on set. They were real gritty kind of guys, and I don't know if
they're asking for specific lattes and green M&Ms.
Yeah, they were like, let's get the shots done, and we have a 12-hour day today, and we're going to be in hot sun, and let's do this.
Sam Fuller shot a gun for action in the
right, exactly.
So, but I
now.
bring him up. Well, not Sam Fuller, but him too. But I mean, I bring John Milius up because. So speaking of this and Warner Brothers, one of the things that I'll admit it now. I mean, this is many years ago. I would sneak into John Milius' office, and I know you did this too. And I
wouldn't call it sneaking.
I would patrol.
I came up with a very good excuse as to why I was in there.
I would patrol the building and make sure that his coffee maker was not.
Exactly. I did the same thing because their secretary or somebody or whoever it was would always leave the coffee
So that's what I did, but I
on.
didn't do anything weird. I was just, kind of, starstruck of this guy. And,
You're breathing in the same air.
Exactly. That's all.
Seriously, I stood next. I never sat at his desk, but I sat there and I stood next to his desk and I go, "That's John Milius' humidor."
That's exactly what it was. I didn't
open
anything.
it. I was like, "That's." But
I would go in there and I shit you not, you guys. It was like, and I don't think he has an office there anymore. I don't.
No. He actually left after he had a stroke and well before that actually. So he left not too much longer after I left.
I remember seeing him pulling in like an old.
He was in there every once in a while. He wasn't there a whole lot.
Yeah.
But
anyway, his office. I mean, it smelled like a cigar,
right? For sure.
And I remember seeing I want to say that there was some kind of a deer antlers on the wall or something like that, or a deer head or something.
His office was very much like a lodge.
It was
it was a man's
Hemingway's
office.
house or something. There was gun and hunting magazines laying around, like a Conan poster on the wall.
It had a I think it was a German Conan poster, but it wasn't not American. So it was much more like the Frank Frazetta drawings than the American posters were.
We've talked about him with Tom Coker. He's a comic book artist. We talked about Frank Frazetta.
Right, Frank Frazetta was awesome.
So this was just and I'm just Conan was a big movie for me as a kid, as were other kind of B movie. Things that he did like Red Dawn.
I will defend Conan to the death, man. I will defend it to the death. If you go back and you look at that film, and if you look at the writing of it and how that film came in development and how John Milius had planned it to be, John Milius was a dork just like me over spaghetti westerns and the Clint Eastwood genres, and he loved Akira Kurosawa, and he loved Sergio Leone and Ennio Morricone, of course. Sure. I think even he tried to get Conan originally. He tried to get Ennio Morricone.
Well, I think he did better with Basil.
But then he got Basil because he went to USC he knew him from USC and stuff.
I
guess.
Got the guy's last name.
Basil Poledouris.
Greek name or
but anyway, something like Conan, it is a well-written movie. It was written by Oliver Stone and then later rewritten by John Milius, and then it became the film it was. But I mean, it's the perfect origin story, and it's the perfect birth of Conan if you look at it. And it's a great movie through and through as far as a 3-act structure goes.
I still think it stands up.
It's a hero journey.
I love that movie.
And it doesn't rely on special effects and things like that. And it doesn't get into this mystical world. It gets into a real world, and you see that now playing out in something like Game of Thrones, where they get crazy in the 5th and 6th seasons once they started getting the really big budgets and the dragons got big. But before that, it was just all based on this is what this world looks like. It's very real to you, and so you could touch it and feel it.
Yeah.
And Conan seemed vulnerable. Even though he was this massive dude that could take on the world and was the closest to what I always forget his name now.
The author of the books. Yeah, I don't remember his name either.
But closest to his original version, I still believe.
I guess this is pretty recent news. They've been talking about it for years, but I think it's been confirmed that Arnold's coming back as Conan, as the
like King Conan, I think,
And, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And if somehow I could tell him that I would be I'm 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyed, I'd look just like the son of his Valkyrie wife.
So we're gonna go all over the place talking tonight, dude. So speaking of that, so obviously you're an actor, and we're gonna have a blog post that goes with this, but I'm gonna be posting everything and references and all the stuff that we're bringing up, whether it's Basil,
for sure,
whatever it is, and all this other whatever stuff on John Milius, in case people don't know who he is. If you don't, and you're listening to this show, you should really know who he is.
Right. He was a great writer. A lot of people, just go back to him real fast. Yeah, Apocalypse Now. But he was also one of these guys that would come in and doctor up these scripts. And he was the one that wrote the famous line. Everybody knows this now, but I knew it a lot longer. He originally came up with the Clint Eastwood line, about the Smith & Wesson, the original Dirty Harry.
Oh, that little monologue?
Yeah, the monologue at the end.
Listen,
did I shoot 5 shots, 6 shots, or only 5?
Right,
that whole thing was him. And then, of course, he came on for other Sudden Impact and those other movies, and I think he even wrote Make My Day.
Yeah.
But the point being is he was one of these guys that in the 70s, he was one of the, if not the most sought-after screenwriter in Hollywood. The guy was, on a lot of, his hands were in everything.
Yeah.
And that's why he was also able to get away with half the stuff he was. But I think there's a reason for that, and that's a reason why I think you're drawn to him just like I am, is he wrote for real people, and he wrote for something that wasn't being said in Hollywood, where everybody else was kind of had this left-wing kind of way of looking at things. He had this opposite right-wing kind of way that really spoke to like a middle America and things like that,
Yeah, well, it got... Yeah, that's why movies like Red Dawn got criticized badly.
Oh,
but it came. That was during the Reagan era too.
Sure.
I think it did pretty well. Maybe I'm wrong.
But it did well. As a kid, we saw it 1,000 times. Yeah, I saw it twice in the theater, and then when it was on HBO, you saw it.
I saw it
100
million times on HBO. Yeah, I think I could. Yeah, you could still make fun of some of the quotes and the "Avenge Me" and all.
Oh
that.
yeah.
So Red Dawn.
Yeah.
If there are any millennial guys listening to this, they're probably going to think it's funny, but it's it's a movie about was it Cuba and Russia invaded the United States?
Yeah, when Patrick Swayze was a real man and Chris Hemsworth,
exactly.
Can't do an American accent.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Remind me, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But so anyway, so you're an actor, and we just did this. Harley Davidson commercial together. And speaking of you being shy to put headshots out in casting directors' offices, he's so humble that even during this shoot, and if you go to triumphantdisasterblog.com, you'll see it. You'll see the long version of it. I'm really proud of it. We've been talking about doing this for about a year, I think now. Yeah,
it was over a year.
Yeah,
somewhere now where we actually started talking about it.
It wasn't. I don't think it was the original idea. Was it necessarily a commercial? We had you had a short film sort of idea.
I was trying to come up with. In all honesty, and to let everybody know what it comes down to is, I've been in this town for a long time as an actor, and and this town is a lot of opportunities are not as easily available as they used to be. I remember when I first came here in the early 90s, I could still go into offices and walk in and talk to casting directors, even though I was very green and off the boat and hadn't been here for very long and was new in town. I sat and had a full conversation one day with Mally Finn in 93, right when I got here. And she was so nice to me. And why she ever let me in her doors to talk to her, I have no idea.
Examples of what she cast? So people
Mally Finn was
famous
biggest known. Yeah. She was known for Terminator 2 was how I knew her at the time. She cast a lot of things that are offhand I can't think of right now, but she ended up passing away.
I think she cast
like
a
2010 or something.
Movies.
Yeah. I think she did. I think she even cast Titanic. I might be wrong on that, but I know for sure she was Terminator 2, but a bunch of other things. And the reason I thought she would be open to me, maybe because it ended up what I did was the classic kung fu thing. I just walked up to her doors and I went into her office and I sat down in her office, and they had a lobby and stuff. And I sat in the lobby and nobody was there the first day except for an assistant at the desk. And I sat there the whole day reading a book. Nothing. Got up at the end of the day, left, came back the next day, went back in the office, sat down, reading a book.
You did one of those.
Just kind of hung out, and I just hung out in the lobby. And the reason I thought that might work, and then she might be receptive to it, is because she was famously known for Edward Furlong. Is that right? The kid from Terminator 2? And she found him at a gymnasium in Glendale or something like that.
Who, by the way, was in American History X, which was Tony Kaye last episode.
For sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I was like, I'm 21 years old, and so I was like, why not? And I kept doing it. I did it for 2 days, and almost till the end of the last day, I was about to leave, and she comes out. I didn't know it was her, and she walks out, and she kind of looks around the lobby, and she goes, "Is there anybody here to help you?" And I said, "No, I've just been sitting here reading my book." And she goes, "What are you here for?" And I'm here to meet Mally Finn. And she was like, "Well, come on in." And she walked back in with me to the office, and we sat down, and I propped my feet up, and she propped her feet up, and she says, "Tell me about yourself, and why are you here?" And I told her, and probably looked like a dummy all the way around, and said what my goals are and stuff. And she said, "Well, this is what you do, and go here and do this, and
old school,
work on this, and come back and see me later and stuff." And I met her a couple of times after that before she passed away. But I would go to like casting seminars and stuff like that, and I always felt so bad going up to, because these people, after every seminar you ever go to with a casting director or something like that, people just inundate them with questions and come talk to you, and they try to get their 3 seconds in. And I've just always felt like that was a very inefficient way to have a conversation with anybody, and it seemed very kind of contrived.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I always just like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to her. And I never did. I never talked to her again after that. And I never got to audition for her or anything, so, but what my point was, is you used to be able to go in and drop off headshots and take it to him.
She was a huge.
She was huge at the time. She was
so for
biggest.
her to do that's really cool, and that's kind of the old school, and that's.
And she was known for doing that.
She was well known for being a very nice person,
right? And she was also well known for supporting actors and really wanting actors to succeed. You hear stories like in something like Terminator 2, to go back to that as a reference. She was known because of the scene. You remember the scene where Sarah Connor was still in the ward and for the institution, and that guard came over her, and that night she was going to escape, and he licks her face.
Yeah, the guy with the mustache, wasn't it?
No, he didn't have a mustache. He was clean shaven, but there was another guy. The mustache is the guy that got thrown against the wall.
When she was acting all catatonic.
Right. Yeah. So she could then escape, and she spit the paperclip out. So anyway, right then, so when she was doing the auditions for that part, she was having all the guys lick her face.
What?
You find out later in these interviews, you hear from her, and I go, "Man, that's so cool, man. I mean, I wouldn't do it."
Well, at least not after the 10th guy.
I don't even know if I'd let a girl lick my face. Like, these beautiful Playboy models lick my face.
So when you, like I said, we're just going to jump around, whatever. But when, at Warner Brothers, did you take advantage of, I remember, and I forget why, and I never really totally took advantage of our opportunities there, but there was, for some reason, at some point, I wanted to talk to, I believe his name was Joel Cox, and he's the editor for all of Eastwood's movies. I think to this day even.
Yep.
Really nice guy. This guy, from what I remember, drove a truck and was just like the most unassuming nicest guy, and he gave me his number there. Wow. Well, it was there. I think it was at the office there, because I was curious.
At Malpaso Productions.
I was trying to get a better gig, and
Sure.
And he just gave me, and he was editing some big movie at the time. I never took him up on it. There were a lot of examples like that. I remember. I mean, we saw everybody working. You live in this town long enough, or you're in this business long enough, you see everybody. But there are a couple of people that when I saw them, or if I had seen them, I would kind of weird out a little bit, because this is like, if they're really iconic from when it's all about from when I was a kid.
Sure.
If it's someone that just came out of your, I don't really give a shit. I don't really give a shit usually in general. People are people, but Clint Eastwood is my example.
Oh yeah,
I remember seeing him. I saw him a few times there, and I talked to him a little bit awkwardly once.
Right,
an awkward situation. But when you see a guy like that, it just all comes back, like some of the earliest movies I saw, I don't know, TV with my dad or something on a Saturday night or something, you know what I mean? Or just whatever.
We were the birth of TNT.
All that stuff.
You got to see that every weekend. You get to see the same,
Right, samurai movies or cowboy movies or whatever. I remember my dad talking up Seven Samurai before I saw it, telling me all about it, and I was so fucking into it. I was so excited about it. I think my dad was partially responsible for my love of movies that way, because he would talk the same thing with Leone movies and a lot of different things. Take me to drive-ins,
How old was your dad compared to you? Like, was he a young man when he had you, or was he older when he had you?
He was. Well, the dad thing's a long story. My dad, who raised me, is who I called my dad. So we'll just go with that.
Right.
And he was. He's. I want to say. I think he was probably about 25 or so, or 26. I think, when I was born. So, and my actual dad was only 18. He was a lot younger. So
right.
Closer. But yeah, I remember remember him even. They used to have these TV guides for Showtime that were like these little brochures, these pamphlets,
right,
by the month. And
For
they got little
sure.
color pictures in them and stuff. And I remember, and this is as far back as I can remember from TV and whatever. I remember they were playing like Enter the Dragon on this thing. And I remember seeing Bruce Lee with the scratch marks, and he was telling me about it.
Never seen it.
He wouldn't let me. Yeah, he wouldn't let me see it at the time. Actually, I was one of those kids whose parents didn't let me see. I had to like see it at other kids' house or whatever, spending the night. That's where I was traumatized by shit like Deer Hunter, and,
right,
and stuff
like, oh my
that.
God.
But that's also, it's those movies like that. We're gonna go all over the place. I don't want to.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, like the Deer Hunter. I remember one time it was a family gathering, and that was on like on a TV, and I remember they wouldn't let me see it. I'd go to bed or whatever, and I remember hearing this, and I thought, God, I wonder. I was just really curious what that was. And plus, when we were kids, and we're dating ourselves, but it's the truth. When we were kids, the Vietnam War was not too many years far gone.
My dad should have went to the Vietnam War.
A handful of years after, so it was a real fresh wound. So, movies like that, I was just like, and the Apocalypse Now too. I wanted to know what the deal was, and so when I saw them, I'm not even talking about just about Vietnam. I'm talking about movies like that. When I saw them, they had a huge impact on me, man.
Right.
Huge. Movies like those.
Well, like Outlaw Josie Wells was a total metaphor for Vietnam,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. Well, whether it was a metaphor or direct. I mean, but it doesn't even have to be. That's a whole nother subject.
For sure.
I just mean, and even like Dog Day Afternoon is another one that pops out at me right now because I just didn't know. I didn't know that acting could be that good.
Right, and so realistic.
So when I see like De Niro and Deer Hunter doing the Russian roulette, holy fuck, or Dog Day Afternoon, Al Pacino in the bank. It's just like, or Sal, fuck, what's his last name? Sal.
You're talking about the actor that passed away.
Really, one of the best actors.
He was married to, or he was dating Meryl Streep.
Sal,
and he was
pops up to me later. I'll tell you, but I'll post.
He was nominated in every film he was ever in.
Godfather 2. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
He was. Deer Hunter, Godfather 2.
I think he's the only actor to ever be like that.
One of the best actors to ever live.
Great, fantastic.
Anyway, so these guys, this stuff had a huge impact on me. Huge impact on me. I don't know where I'm going with this.
But don't sell yourself short. You know that Road Warrior just meant as much as you to me.
Oh, fuck,
and everything, and seeing movies like that, that we wouldn't have seen, because that was the thing too, is we got to see the birth
of so much. It's still one of my favorite movies.
It's still one of my favorite films. I mean, you go back and you look at that, it's like just crazy. I mean, but you look at films like that, like we kind of saw the birth of a lot of filmmaking, and Australian filmmaking was one of those things. They used to have these bad B movies, like I think they called one Razorback or something like that, or it was about a gigantic hog that was not killing people. But I mean, they had these just crazy films. So when you saw something like Road Warrior that was really well pieced together and done well, which, I mean, a lot of people will be haters of it, but, I've never really been a big fan of Mad Max and stuff.
Mad Max,
but
okay.
I mean, I get it, and they have a lot of great,
it was the
memorable
Road Warrior
things
for me, though,
but it was like so underdone that even later, George Miller said that he's like, when I did Road Warrior, I was really just remaking Mad Max because I didn't have the budget before. I didn't have the budget to even do the ideas I had.
Right.
And that really kind of kept him back. So when you see something like Road Warrior, God, now as an actor, that's all I still want to do. Is I still want to be like dressed up and go get a mohawk and then act like and put this eyeshadow on and then do a wheelie down the road on this motorcycle.
Yeah, no, it's like, a combination of
and wear shoulder pads.
Yes. Which we came close to in that commercial we just
and
did.
Then also have just ridiculously over the top Australian accents,
You know what it was? I think that when we were kids, like movies like so we would go to video stores when we were kids. And it was like a fucking...
Like mom and pop video stores,
all
not
mom
even
and pop.
Blockbuster.
No. They were all mom and pop. Yeah. And it was like a fucking kid in a candy store because it was all about the covers.
Right.
And so you can go to like the action area and you'd go to like... And you'd see these crazy cheap like post-apocalyptic biker movies with spikes on their handlebars and shit like that. And there'd be like a couple dozen of them, dude.
Right.
There'd be so when you came across the Road Warrior, and this is like a quality one, it was a whole new ball game.
Oh, right.
Or they'd have all these like rows of horrible slasher movies and horror movies, and I'd rent the shit out of them too.
Yeah.
Like, And seen so many of them, but
and bad nudity even.
Oh yeah, oh God, you would hope so. You'd hope so. That's what you try to talk your parents into renting one. No, you knew it had that in there, right?
Yeah. My friend told me. But I mean, see, you probably still remember, like even me. I was such a movie nerd that I would go and to the magazine shop. I mean, to like not even the 7-Elevens, the convenience stores, and you'd get magazines like Fangoria and cinematography magazines, because they're the only way you learned anything about Hollywood and how they did things. And so you got to see how they made some of the special effects, or how they popped somebody's chest open in Friday the 13th, and you're just like, this is so cool. Yeah, it's so cool.
Which is one of my favorite movies. Which is another one that really blew me away as a kid. For sure.
Well, I mean, if we're going to get on any kind of through line here, I think what I would say is what I would say is that what brings our similarities close is that for movies like that, they're movies of substance, and they're movies of story, and they're movies of character. And you see something like Thing, even, once again, cheesy sci-fi, but even with the campy special effects that pretty well hold up, but still are a little campy-ish, being it's I think 82 when they filmed it.
Yeah.
As a story, it absolutely holds up, and it'll never fall apart.
Special effects, I even if you recognize them for what they are, you could. I mean, like you said, it's 1982, for Christ's sake. I mean, but, the effects, I'm serious. I would rather have that than a lot of CGI in a way. And the reason why is that there's a life to it, man. There's a life to it. And I'm always, the CGI is getting more and more impressive every, fucking week. I mean, you see a crazy shit. And there's a lot of good stuff that you can do with it.
I went and saw The Jungle Book, and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's insane.
That is unbelievable. it's, but you still know that it's
missing somehow.
There is, but
I'm watching not a cartoon, but there's something about it that takes a little bit of emotion out of it somehow to me. And maybe that'll change, but I don't know, man. I don't know. There's something about photography of actual, it's the same thing with people talk about how actors are going to be replaced, and I just don't see it. I think that cameras capture. And we're going to get a little woo-woo here, but it captures the soul a little bit.
We'll be naive, and you and I have the same. A lot of people that think I'm not spiritual. I absolutely am spiritual, and I believe in that stuff all the way. And I think you pick up somebody's soul and what that is and who they are, and it comes through in that and things that. Are made in CGI world. Avatar has been the closest to it, but that was still made with actors.
So it's in there. You can make cool stuff,
right?
You can make a story,
and if it fits in the story, and if it fits into the right idea,
you can make a moving story in a way. Like when I saw The Lion King, I teared up.
Yeah, for sure.
Cartoon. So you can make or whatever. Bambi gets mom get killed, whatever. You can make a moving story, but you're
not getting that third eye.
You're not gonna have that soul. Yeah, there's. I'm glad that you. I kind of put myself out there by throwing that out there, but I really believe that, actually.
Yeah. No, after that, I think it just becomes contrived in little ways.
Completely. Completely. And,
and still, whenever you see something that's super successful, like something like The Incredibles that is, pretty, over the top kind of CG. If you would look at it that way, it's kind of cartoonish.
I love that movie.
And it's fantastic. Yeah. But, the actors are the ones that sell it, and the soul of the characters, and you get into it, and those people have a life, behind it. So it really sells it.
So speaking of that, in acting, so you did this commercial.
You're going to force me to talk about this.
Well, just briefly, because because I want to, I want people to see this thing, because I think when they do, they'll see that you belong in that kind of thing. You're like this perfect, iconic cowboy kind of guy. So, but you're still, even as we're speaking, you're a little bit. You have so much humility. All I was going to say is, when you were talking about not wanting to put your pictures in the casting director's desk and things like that, because you felt like, you have this. You have this blue collar American kind of humility, and which means you don't, want to talk yourself up, which is we're going to get around to American actors and that sort of thing, but it's the same attitude that keeps a lot of people guys in our culture, I think, from acting as much now as maybe they used
Well,
to.
it's true in a lot of ways.
I think, and I've had this conversation with Kevin Schulman. He was on an episode, I think it was the second one, and he feels like a lot of guys in this country are not getting a lot of classical training or training at all, which may be true, but not everybody. That's not true for everybody, and I know that for sure. Because I mean, this country was like the hotbed of actors and training for the longest time, and something happened along the road where you don't see a lot of tough guy type characters or heroic characters, even prototypical American characters like Superman, of all things.
It's played by a British guy.
The American flag waving comic book character is not played by an American guy right now. So something's wrong, and it's not for shortage of talent. Although,
if you read the magazines, they'll say it's shortage of talent.
Yeah, and this is what Kevin felt the same way, and it's fine. It's a valid opinion, and maybe I don't know if there's some truth to it or not. I don't feel that there is, but I think that there might be maybe something culturally that shifted away from. I know it wasn't true in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s when we're talking about guys like Lee Marvin or whatever.
For sure,
all these other guys. And the list goes on and on.
Well, it'd be sacrilegious to have somebody a British person to play Audie Murphy. It's like,
and here's the other thing, and we talk about this all the time too. We'll talk about this in a second, but like I just think that a lot of guys, American guys, who are really kind of manly dudes, kind of shy away from it a little bit because precisely they have the same attitude or similar that you do of this sort of self-effacing, not wanting to take the credit. It's what you see in a lot of guys who are in the military, to be honest with you.
Right.
And, who maybe a lot of guys who maybe in the past who may have become actors or directors or artists, whatever, writers, whatever the case may be, like everything else, are shying away, and they're ending up in places like that, like and staying there and doing her real heroic shit,
right?
But when you're saying, we're talking about, it'd be sacrilegious to have an English guy play Audie Murphy or whatever. In the same, because on the exact same note, I think it would be shitty for an American guy to.
Well, they already talked about it with 007.
I don't know.
007,
perfect example.
I mean, it's like they talk about 007 all the time, and they would never even consider an American guy to play it.
Why would you? I think that would be stupid. I would be, why the fuck would they pick an American guy for that? But when we state this, when we make this case about having a British guy play Superman. It's not for being, it's not some weird thing.
It's not dislike because of I don't like that guy in particular,
or because
the
some
British
of my favorite actors are.
You're just like, but like,
Gary
why?
Oldman's one example, or Tom Hardy's another example. I'm a huge fan of that guy. So,
I can get on. I can kind of go off this. I think what it is like, the one thing that separates a lot of people is opportunity. I think, I've been in this a while, and I actually heard this. If you ever want to hear a great commentary, is it Michael Cimino? Is that how you say his name?
Cimino, I think.
Yeah. And he's the guy. He directed Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, but he also and I'm gonna forget the dang movie now. But it
Heaven's
had
Gate.
Mickey Rourke, and it was
Year of the Dragon.
Year of the Dragon.
Yeah.
And it's a really good commentary, and half the commentary he talks
and that's
about
with Mickey Rourke, by the way.
Right. And he talks about Clint Eastwood, but he also talks a lot about the filmmaking and what he does. Like he'll give little notes, like I could shoot a whole movie with a 35 millimeter and an 85 millimeter lens. And you're like, okay, so he's very practical, but he had a lot of examples of somebody like Clint Eastwood and things that Clint Eastwood told him, because a lot of people don't know that Clint Eastwood gave him his first opportunity because he had written, I believe it was Magnum Force, and it was the first screenplay he'd ever written. And while they're on the set or something like that, or in pre-production for Magnum Force, he asked Michael if Clint Eastwood asked him, have you written anything else? And he goes, oh, I have this other movie, and I finished. And Clint's like, well, send it over and I'll read it. And so he sends it over and reads it. That's Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. And Clint Eastwood comes back the next day and he's like, that's going to be my next picture. Comes back the next day and he says, hey, Michael, have you ever thought of directing? He's like, I've considered it, I've thought about it, but I've never really done it and everything. He goes, well, okay, well then you'll direct the picture. And walks away, and then and then they shoot the movie. And he gave, and later, whenever they became older, and
this is how Thunderbird and Lightfoot got made,
right?
By the way, one of my favorite movies out of the '70s. One of my favorite movies, I think. Actually, there's another one you guys need to look
and I'll
up.
tell you,
this is with a young Jeff Bridges. It's one of his first movies.
Yeah, young. And there's actually a really good story I like out of that from Jeff Bridges, giving an example of talking with Clint Eastwood and on set and stuff. But anyway, real quick to finish the story about Michael, he said later he would talk to Clint about that and why did you give me these opportunities? Because I could have absolutely failed and done badly. And he said, a lot of times I feel that what really separates most people is opportunity, and most people just don't get the opportunity to be successful.
Yeah.
And Clint Eastwood was well known for that. Like Joel Cox, you brought him up. I think he was his best boy on like Every Which Way But Loose or something like that, or Any Which Way You Can.
I wouldn't doubt it.
He's kind of worked his way up until he became eventually his lead guy and everything and all that stuff. So I mean, he always gave people opportunities, and he said, that's usually what separates. He goes, because most people, if you give them the opportunity, they'll usually surprise you at how well they'll do. But most people just don't give that shot, and that's even why he'll say that he doesn't even audition as actors. I auditioned for Flags of Our Fathers, and I never got to meet him.
How'd that come about?
But he said that basically he never liked to interview his actors because he felt too bad. So I mean, how Flags of Our Fathers came up is because I knew somebody that knew Joe Cox, and
there you go.
Got to talk to Joe Cox, and Joe Cox said, "Yeah, bring him in." And it was one of those things you just hustle and try to find every little door and crack you could ever do, and all that. So, but anyway, so I mean, where were we starting from? Where was that?
Oh, but shoot, we're all over the place. We're talking about the American parts being played by.
Oh yeah. But I mean, so Clint Eastwood was really big on that, and that's what we were talking about, Michael Cimino, and giving opportunity. And right now, there's just not a whole lot of opportunity out there. And you see a lot of the same actors recycled over and over. And this business is run by a lot of agents that want to hire their actors out, and they're full. Yeah. So it's tough to get in there, and especially whenever you have everything's either big budget or small budget. And I heard somebody tell me a story the other day where, like, John Hurt was doing a film where he was getting paid like $150 a day.
It's very big or very small,
right? And so you're just like, all right, you know. So the pie's gotten smaller. So living here in LA and not being able to travel because most everything else that goes out of states, they're going to use local hires if they're not doing the main characters, and unless you have the ability to work there.
Which is why you aren't going to get this thing. You wanted to take your destiny into your own hands a little bit and put yourself out there.
Yeah, every casting director I'd talked to over the years, not everyone, but it'd come up more and more over the years. That, listen, if you want to work in this town, you have to create your own opportunities. And I know that sounds like old hat, but I don't think Brad Pitt walked into L.A. back when he was a kid and thought he'd have to write his own film and produce his own film and make his own film. He was trying to be an actor. Yeah. And so it kind of caught me off guard, but hey, it's like, I'm game. I'll try it. And I think I have a good eye for things, and I think I have a good storytelling mind. Yeah. So let me see what I can do. And so how the Harley Davidson thing came up was just, I guess from here, I don't want to shoot a short film because I saw how badly it can go so much and how much time has to be dedicated to it and how much finances you have to be dedicated to it because you have to really be committed to making a film.
You know what's interesting about that? I mean, interrupt.
No, go ahead.
With the short film thing, it's I've done a couple and I've done a couple more that I hardly even consider really even short, but they were right. in essence. But every time I did one, or after I did one or two, after both of them, I said, nah, I'm never going to do one of these again. If I'm going to do them, it's going to be a feature because the work almost feels the same. Like the amount of work you have to put into it almost feels the same. It's weird. I mean, and this thing that we did, which is less than a minute long, is a lot of work. People don't realize what goes into doing something like this. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to do it relatively on a small crew and everything, but God, the pre-production, like we said, we'd been talking about it for over a year. I'd been talking about it, where as far as the idea, and to be perfectly honest, to go back to what I was saying is like, something like a short film, you have to write it, you have to do something like 30 pages, 20, 30 pages. If it's going to be kind of respectable, you could do something smaller, and maybe if you come up with a really good concept. But it's a lot of time and work. Like you said, we shot a minute and we shot a whole day, and there wasn't 1 minute spared. You know, I mean,
that was the shooting part, but I mean the prep.
But the prep all the way up and before that. So could you imagine if we weren't just working for 1 minute? You know, so I knew it'd be a big task. And in all honesty, I'm a married man with 2 kids, 15 and 18. And, you know, we live with my father-in-law and take care of him, and we're just a regular American family.
Yeah.
You know, my wife's a school teacher. So I knew it would be a very big task for me to be able to take on. But I knew I could choose something short. So I said, I could do a commercial. So what can I do as a commercial? And I was always getting cast, especially when I had longer hair and a big full beard. I was always getting cast on Harley Davidson spots and things like that. I played, you know, a couple of parts like that before and going on those auditions all the time.
And some Lord of the Rings
And Lord of the Rings, I did a commercial for Lord of the Rings, a video game commercial. And, you know, and I was like, what can I do that would be something because I always want to say, write what you know and what you like. And I like we said before when we first started this, you know, I grew up on the Westerns. I grew up on that iconic kind of figure that, you know, to me, that's like reading Shakespeare, you know, seeing that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, it is, you know, somebody like, was it Robert Duvall said, you know, the American Western is our Shakespeare.
It's our mythology.
Yeah, it's our mythology because that's where America had its biggest flourishment and grown.
Yeah.
And so anyway, getting back to that, I said, well, what can I do? And another thing I have a talent for and able to do is ride horses. But I could never book a commercial riding horses except for this Lord of the Rings thing. It was the only thing I'd ever done. And I'd been on other commercials and I'd seen other actors, and you go in all the time and you see these.
There was a time in Hollywood that you couldn't get work if you couldn't ride a horse.
If you couldn't ride a horse, you couldn't do it. Yeah. And to go back and be nostalgic for a little bit, whenever I first came here, I was naive enough to go, you know what, maybe it's going to be like Ben Johnson. When Ben Johnson came in, he was a wrangler on these movie sets.
I love this actor, by the way. If you guys don't know who he is, look him up. There's a monologue of him from the Last Picture Show.
Last Picture Show.
Really
you know, the one that most noticeably, but he played cops and other things as he got older. But he was I'm from Oklahoma. Ben Johnson, I believe, was from Oklahoma. And he was just an old cowboy and stuff.
He was the real deal.
And he was the real deal. And he came out to Hollywood and because he knew he could get work as a wrangler. And he started working as a wrangler on Hollywood sets and stuff like that. And then before you know it, he was such a good writer. They're like, well, you can do stunts and stuff. And so he did stunts. And the next thing you know, you could actually read lines pretty well, and you're pretty good at, you know, he had a great affectations to his voice and everything, and a very Southern accent. Yeah. And so he was money. Yeah. And so I was like, I love that guy. And
he really was a good actor.
Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. But that's because Ben Johnson was Ben Johnson. Yeah. And you get somebody, you know, I mean, even Tom Hardy, as good as he is, couldn't play Ben Johnson, you know, and there are certain people that have that kind of thing. And I thought that was going to be a little bit more about what Hollywood was going to be about, you know.
Actually, it made me think of also, and I'm having trouble remembering his name. Maybe you might remember it, but he was in The Straight Story with that David Lynch directed. He was this older guy. Shit, I wish I had IMDb to look up right now.
We got IMDb, but anyway.
Yeah, look him up while you talk.
But going back to
another guy like that who was just and he was actually I think he was a World War II veteran.
Right.
And he was he started out in stunts.
Right.
He started out in stunts.
A few guys did that. Yeah.
I'll this will be on the blog later. I wish I can think of it now, but I'll put something up there. But
no, I mean,
kind of, and the list of guys like that was pretty long, actually.
So every girl I ever dated before my wife was a horseman in some way, or a horse girl in some way, or riding horses and stuff. And I always loved horses growing up. I felt connected to horses and things like that. And so I was a pretty decent rider. I was never fantastic, but I was a good rider. And turns out in Hollywood terms, I'm a pretty goddamn good rider.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so Okie from the country knows how to ride dirt bikes and horses pretty well.
So I was like, I never get to use these things. Yeah. And so I came up with the idea of combining the Harley Davidson with kind of an old Western feel and the spirit of the old American West rider meets the modern day rider, and I felt the two would meet really well because you have the spirit of the old West horseman meets the modern day horseman, and the modern day horse meets the past horse, and when those two spirits meet, how they come together and how they're kind of just the same thing, and even kind of the person that character is.
The spirit is the same.
Exactly.
The free spirit.
And so. So came up with an idea on how to shoot that and be able to show off off a little bit.
You need to. You know what? that makes me think about something you said a couple minutes ago about you're a family man. You're a dad, you got a couple kids and a wife, and you have this little house, and you're an artist, you're an actor, and I think I can only assume that there's guys out there listening, and I hope they are listening to you say this, because it could be anything. It doesn't have to be acting. It could be anything. I don't give a shit what it is. Maybe they fucking blacksmith. They want to blacksmith knives or something.
Right.
Whatever the case may be.
I know a guy that in his mid-30s just turned his whole life around and quit his job and became an artist painting murals.
Well, there you go.
And the next thing you know, he's painting murals on the side of buildings and being, asked to, sought after. But changed everything and hadn't done it since he was a teenager.
But you're not. It's not like it's not being irresponsible for what you're doing in any way at all. I think there's so much resistance, man, and this brings up, it's become really popular on the internet lately on podcasts and stuff. People are always talking about Stephen Pressfield and the War of Art. I think it's one of those Rogan things where he brought it up, and all of a sudden all these bro podcasters
for sure
about this guy. But it's been around for a while, this book, and it's all about conquering resistance.
It's a good book. I've read it.
It's just great.
Well, it's also about putting one foot in front of the other, getting up every day and writing, and
just doing it,
and pushing your emotions aside and saying, "Listen, you got to do this, and you're good enough." And
he's amazing author. He's a great artist, and former Marine too, actually.
For sure.
But my point is basically what I was getting. Long and short of it is, you're a family man, and you're doing it anyway, dude. And you're not regarding any of your responsibilities. And I think a lot of guys do it, and it sounds harsh, but it's true. It's kind of an excuse. It's resistance to doing what you want to do, and it's not disregarding your responsibilities. It's using them as an excuse.
Right?
And it's not easy, dude.
I don't ever want to use it as an excuse, because they're really, I think William, up by us, William Fichtner has his kids up here somewhere and stuff, and you see these, they're working actors like anybody else, and that's what I want to be. That's what I want to be. He's a working actor, and out there, and the frustration that bore this commercial, is basically out of, I've had 2 auditions this year, and you just want to get out there
yourself,
and you got them. It's just like you work your ass off and you hustle and you hustle and you hustle, and you just want to get out there, and that's it. You just want to get out there and you want to work, and you just want to go back to what we said and make it take it away from the actual physicals. You just want opportunity to be able to maneuver through your goals. That's what I find interesting. And the cool thing about movie making or films or acting and those things is that it still is an art form that will allow you to be able to break that barrier and go from the first floor to the 30th floor really quickly. Not that you ever want something like that, but you're able to move up. You don't have to climb the ladder like starting in the mailroom and then walking up, and stuff like that. Because listen, if it's a good idea, and if it's something a producer's never heard before or somebody likes, they'll take it. And or if you present them with that, they'll take it. They're like, "Oh, good job. We'll take it."
If it's going to make us money, we'll do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of the last businesses where you can actually do that.
Yeah.
So for that, there is hope, and you just keep on going through and you just keep plugging away. So, I'm excited more than ever, and I feel more prepared than ever, in every way.
Yeah. So,
when you see something like this commercial, I'm happy as can be with it, but I just, like you said, I'm a little too humble sometimes, and it's probably been the detriment to some of the things that the reason I might not have been more successful over the years.
Maybe, but maybe you weren't really ready either. It's one of these things. I don't know about you, and it sounds like it. Maybe it could be different, but for me, there's a thing when you're younger. I never got into doing what I do for. I'd like to say this, and I think it's mostly true, for validation.
Right.
I really wanted to do things for myself. It's a need that I had.
For sure.
But what I did have is a sense of my identity completely enveloped in it. So, like, in other words, I am this. Like, I am an actor, and this is all that I fucking care about, and this is this intense, and I work my ass off, and I do all these things every day to get better and better, and for years, and I'll live like a hermit and do whatever to really out of balance. This is everything. So in other words, my whole identity was wrapped up. Like if you were, let's say, in an unhealthy way, if you were, let's say your identity was as a concert pianist or whatever, and you broke your hand really badly and you can never do it again, you'd probably kill yourself because it's your identity. That's all that you are. Right. So I had that. I did have that when I was younger that I don't have anymore. And it was all I ate and slept and breathed. It was everything, to the point where it's really, life is not fun. I'm not like that now, and I have a perspective now that I'm a little older that I feel that you do too, maybe in a different way. But it's a certain maturity where you're past that and you're ready for it.
For sure. No, absolutely. The way that, to use a different analogy than you did, I always kind of put it back to sports because I was an athlete growing up, and I played baseball. And when you play baseball, in order to be proficient at it, it's like anything in the world. It's like the 10,000 hour rule. You just spent time and effort, and you chopped wood and carried water, as an old saying says, which is, you got to get used to the things that are going to make you good that are not fun to do, which is you got to stand over a 3-foot tee, put a ball on top of it, and then whack it off. And then put another ball up there, stand a little bit further back, work on pushing it the other way, whack it off. It's a horrible way to say it, but that's an old hillbilly in me. You got to knock the sumbitch out of it. So anyway, you just had to hit it, and you just had to do that over and over and over, and hit. And in order to be good at group fielding a ground ball, it was just field the ground ball. And that was one thing that I found difficult to translate over into being an actor in LA, was you didn't have the same opportunities of teeing it up. You know what I mean? You could pay to go to acting school forever and ever and ever and say that you were with this acting coach or whatever, and you could do all these small little plays and do these things that make you no money, or you do background and stand-in work to kind of just at least be on a movie set and be around the people that you want to be around, and do something you really enjoy, and then find out that you really do enjoy it. You're like, man, I love it. Standing here and having guys put lights around me and stuff like that, and move over to your left a little bit. Hey, Curtis, can you turn left? And yeah, for sure. I'll do that. And stuff like that. I found that fun. The whole point of making movies, I love it. I love being there and I love doing it. And that's the one thing that I find, that is the hardest to deal with, is not being to have that opportunity of hitting it off the tee.
Which is why you came to the conclusion that
to build my own tee.
Build your own fucking tee and then whack some bitch off. Did you? So speaking of whack that some bitch out of here, so you're a guy, that's cut from a certain cloth. We're from different parts of the country, right? But I think the class that we're from
very
is the
similar.
Same.
I always like to tell people I'm redneck squared.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of a Northwest. We're sort of a lumberjacky redneck. We're Hicks, but a different kind of Hick.
I'm from suburban Oklahoma City.
I'm
from Oklahoma, and I'm from. I grew up. I had a small house, two bedroom house, a 3-bedroom house that I raised with my mom, my dad, and 3 boys. So but my other half of the side of the family came from Arkansas, and the town my dad lives in today has the same population it had whenever he was a kid. Okay, and they're just they're as hillbilly as they come. They're beautiful people.
There's a certain culture though that we come from. There's a certain there's certain ethics about work, about who you are, about how to hold yourself and behave as a guy.
Right. And whenever I say this too, my being that I was raised in the city, but my mother was from like Choctaw, Oklahoma, where my mother was literally a coat of many colors type of a girl, like the old Dolly Parton song where her mother made her own jacket and kids at school would make fun of her. They were, didn't have a whole lot of money, and they lived outside the city of Choctaw, which was a small city already in 1946 when she was born. So it's like one of those things where, you just had a different value system that was put on you. They had as many flaws as anybody else. They love to drink, and they love their opinions, and they have a hard life. And
that can fuel a lot of your experience, though.
For sure. Absolutely.
And your work ethic. What do you think some of those values are that you're mentioning? Is it easy to articulate? Or some of these ways of being that, let's say, here's what I'm getting at. Here's what I'm getting at. Like, I've been here a long time, in Los Angeles a long time, and the culture that I grew up in, the guys I grew up around, this sort of thing, it's a lot different. And they're a pretty tough breed of guys.
For sure.
There. And if they, it's funny. It's and I think it's, in a weird way, it's a hindrance. And these guys love me and I love them. But there's like a weird thing where I almost feel like the conscience of these guys on my shoulder down here has kept me from maybe doing what I needed to do career-wise. The culture is so different here that I'm like, if these guys saw what I'm doing now, they'd kick my ass.
Yeah, they don't understand.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing something really LA right now or something. You know what I mean? Where it's like, and it's kind
You're doing body movements?
Right. But in a lot of ways, it's guided me in a way that I'm proud of and happy of. But in some ways, I think it's probably limited me a little bit.
For sure.
No.
I felt
but these are the values that I'm talking about. There's certain values where it's like, you're not going to do that shit, are you? What the fuck?
Right.
Or yeah, I'm going to stand by my guns on this thing.
Right.
It goes both ways, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And, so how do you feel? Do you feel like it's helped or hindered you in any way?
I think in some ways it's probably hindered me, but I don't want ever anybody to think that would be an excuse.
Yeah.
And I'm not that, and that's not why I would state it. It's just like I said before, like whenever I would meet somebody like Mally Finn outside of this, I was always like, I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah, what would my buddies think
why
of me
would
doing this shit?
But
maybe not literally that, but that kind of way that you grew up. It's there, whether you think about it consciously or
not.
It's,
and given a certain respect to people and stuff like that as well, it was always hard for me. A buddy of mine who made it up through the sound business of Hollywood and stuff. From the rock side of it, he was a musician, but he knew a lot about sound, so he ended up translating over and getting into sound for movies. And he was getting everybody's coffee and doing everything in his mid-30s and stuff that he never thought he'd be doing, and eventually got really good at it and everything, and blah blah blah. And whenever I first got here, when I met him, he gave me some good advice, because I was always like, I don't want to bug these people, and I don't want to send my headshots in, and I don't want to bother these people or write letters. He goes, man, or somebody might tell me to contact them. Curtis, contact me, and and I'll help you out, and see that you get to the right people or something. He's like, you gotta keep contacting them, and I'm like, well, I already did once, and he's like, well, but you got to contact them again, because listen, it's not that they don't like you; it's that they are so busy. They have no time for anything else, and they've forgotten about you the minute you had the conversation. So you reminding them is not making them angry.
The very first guy I had on this show was a Scottish actor named Brian Larkin. He was in London Has Fallen, and he said something about how, and he came, and he's from
like a lower class kind of Scottish.
Scottish area. He's he was originally going to be a cop,
right?
So he was a different culture, but again, sort of cut from the same cloth. And he said and he came up on his own and worked his ass off and he said you gotta, something to the effect of you got to keep bugging these people almost to the point where you think it's
a
crazy,
nuisance.
like it's too much.
But that's always been the worst of me, because it's like I'm in a position now where I have a job where I'm around people that admire certain people, and I do security, and it's hilarious to see people just gloat onto these.
Do you want to not say where you were? Maybe you should.
I don't know if I do or not.
That's fine. I won't say it. But it's a famous place.
Yeah, and I get
with
to
a lot
see
of high-profile people.
Yeah, exactly. And I just find that I almost get embarrassed for the people whenever they're trying to connect with some successful person. In such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I've never been good at that it makes me uncomfortable seeing somebody else do it. I'm like, don't, dude.
I know, I've seen it. I know what you're talking about. But on the I know, dude. I've seen. But on the flip side, you've met And this is related to the exact same thing as far as, like, you know, coming from a certain culture and trying to, you know, do something in the arts, or in this case it's movies specifically, whatever. Like, you've met, for example, I'll bring a name up, like Billy Bob Thornton,
right,
who I'm a huge fan of,
right.
And he came from an area where your dad's
he
from,
came
right?
from. I met Billy Bob Thornton because I was working on a movie, doing extra work or stand-in. I can't remember now. I think it was Primary Colors, actually, and I was working on that.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, before you tell the story, I just want to say the reason why I asked to hear about this is because whether it's him or others, maybe there are others too, but someone that you've met that maybe came from a similar circumstance that made you feel like, oh, okay, I don't have to do anything fucking different. I don't have to pretend like I'm anything different. I need to embrace who the fuck I am to, you know. Would that be a good example of someone that?
Well, Billy Bob for sure. I mean, because the story was, it's a good example because we just sat down, and if I remember it right, I was at lunch and he was at lunch, and I had been prior in the day talking to his assistant, and his assistant noticed my accent, and I had like a cowboy hat on for the scene or something like that I brought from my own closet, and he commented on it and stuff, and he started asking me where I was from, and I said, well, I'm from Oklahoma, and he goes, wow, you don't sound like you're from Oklahoma, and I said, well, I got some family in Arkansas and stuff like that too, and he goes, where at in Arkansas? And I said, Walden, Arkansas, and he goes, oh, cool, and he goes, I'll tell Billy Bob you're from Arkansas. He likes to meet people from Arkansas, and I'm like, I'm not from Arkansas, I'm from Oklahoma, and he goes, okay, cool, and then so I let it go, and 3 or 4 hours later I'm sitting there having lunch, and then Billy Bob walks up and sits down next to me, and he goes, that's a cool hat you got there, and just struck up a conversation, and he said, I hear you're from Arkansas, and I said, nope, not from Arkansas, I'm from Oklahoma, but my dad's from Arkansas, and he's like, where's your dad at from Arkansas? And I said, Walden, Arkansas, and most people don't know where it's from, and he goes, I picked up my uncle from jail in Walden, Arkansas. And so we just sat back and had a conversation for like 45 minutes, and he couldn't have been more pleasant and nice and everything, and we just talked about acting, and he talked about his nerves getting up whenever he hears bad Southern accents by actors and stuff like that, and it made me kind of
maybe from other countries
breathe a little sigh of relief and go, oh, I'm not crazy, you know. Right. And so I was like, so I was like, that's cool, man. And I said, so he was very nice, and he gave me a lot of advice, but one of the advices he gave me was, he goes, man, I never thought I'd be a writer, but I didn't come here to be a writer, and I just couldn't get any parts. Couldn't get anything.
Back to that again.
And I was a Southerner, and I couldn't get any Southern parts, and then, or they wouldn't even give me a part because I was a cop. Like the cop in L.A. couldn't have a Southern accent,
right?
You know,
sure.
I moved here when I was 21. I could have a Southern accent and be a LAPD cop, So it's like one of those things. He said, it's like, so I had to write my own stuff, and he's like, the one thing that you have an advantage over everybody else here is you come from a place that these people have never come. They don't know anything about. And then we started talking about where my dad's from and everything. And I was like, oh, man, it makes a huge difference. And he's like, yeah, those people don't know that world. And nobody knew my world. So I wrote my world. And I wrote where I came from. So, he goes, you got to write your own stuff, even though you don't want it. Because I told him how difficult it was for me to sit down and punch things up and stuff. And, it's just something I've not really gravitated toward. But I want to do.
You have to.
You have to now.
You have to. I remember... when I first moved here, I was working at a gym called Crunch, and at the time, it's still there, but at the time it was kind of this sort of celebrity hangout. Mm-hmm. Remember when Robert Downey Jr. got out of jail, he showed up there, it's guys like that. Mm-hmm. And I talked to some people. I remember talking to just a couple people that are not, Jon Favreau was one. Mm-hmm. This is before he ever directed anything. He actually had, I think, it wasn't long after Swingers, actually.
For sure.
So he was just acting, and it was him and Gavin O'Connor, who is a director who's actually become a big one now. He just did a small movie called Tumbleweeds back then, a little Sundance movie, but he did Warrior and Miracle, the one with Kurt Russell, the hockey and all.
Yeah.
So he's pretty a big one now. But back then, I talked to both of these guys. I was like, hey, man, whatever. We talk every day, and I just wanted some advice. How the fuck do we do this, And there's a little Starbucks right by the gym. So just went down and hung out and had a coffee. And I remember with both of these guys, it was the exact same thing. I said, dude, you just gotta. I remember Gavin Connor saying something about how he was sleeping on his brother's couch when he was riding tumbleweeds, and he didn't have anything. And he was like, he started out as an actor, if I remember right. He was actually in that movie too. He was really good in that movie. I'll probably put a trailer up for it on the blog or whatever. But he said, yeah, man, he wrote this thing, and he was like, he didn't know what he was doing. It's not like you have to get permission to do something.
And that's what we were talking about earlier.
We feel like, well, I don't know, I never went to school for this.
For sure.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah. Which you
just
did,
have to
so.
do it. I did. But eventually I did, yeah. But I mean, but you don't.
That's why
you don't have to wait for someone to give you fucking permission or to choose you for anything.
Yeah.
And that's what these guys were telling me then, and it took me a while for me to sack up enough to really actually.
Is that when you started wanting to be a director and do that?
Yeah. My whole idea originally was just to create opportunities for myself as an actor.
For sure.
I mean, it evolved a lot since then too. But
right.
I mean, both of these guys said that basically the same thing, dude. You just have to write because no one gives a shit about you until you. But if you write something, you have something that they know they can make money from, or then you can do it. But I like the idea anyway of even if you did, let's say, get out a lot. Let's say you got out on a lot of auditions instead of a couple a year or whatever. Let's say you're out a couple a day, or still. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of putting your own destiny in other people's hands.
For sure.
Waiting for someone to choose you.
Right.
Like you're the little kid with the limp in recess that's the last that's picked for kickball or something.
Right.
It's not. It's. I like the idea of doing your own thing, and so it took me a while to really pick that up and run with it, but it sunk in deep, and it's the same message that you're going to hear from anybody.
For sure, yeah.
And but it's a better message. It's a better one than trying to align yourself with what you think is the most marketable, what you think will sell you the best. You are who you are. If you tried to be a slick James Bond guy, there's no fucking way you'd ever work. Yeah. But you, as who you are, doing your own thing, like what this commercial is,
for sure,
perfect, for sure. And so, I just think it's kind of cool. I'm glad we got around to talking about this and about doing it regardless of your circumstances. Like you're a family man.
Well,
for example.
I don't know, because you were the one that actually started. I mean, you were the one saying this exact same thing to me then. You just got to do it, dude. Let's do a date.
I did kick your ass a little bit.
Yeah, let's do a date.
I was like, you got to set
I've kicked your ass in the past, so it was a return.
Yeah, no, but obviously I did it because I wanted you to do this thing. But I did it also because I know what it's. I understand being in your shoes, and I know, for me, it took actually setting a date and burning the bridges behind you.
For sure.
And there's no turning back. You have to do it. So you put it out there, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to fail, so we got to do this.
Right. For sure, and with that in mind, when something like our commercial, that commercial, geez, we couldn't have had a better alignment of the universe on the day of and everything, but that was also because of good pre-production and working hard and having a whiskey over at a bar, and
we did it a couple times.
Have a couple of times where we really kind of fleshed things out, and I'm telling you exactly what my stresses are. God damn it, I don't want this to be stupid.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be dumb, and I don't want this to be contrived. I want this to be something that looks real and that we can sell to somebody. And I think we accomplished that.
I think we did too. I hope so. Well, you guys will be the judge, but I'm really glad that we did, and I'm happy with what we did. And so, now what, man? For you, do you have
now what
cooking in the back of your mind?
I got to sit down and write my Western.
Yeah, is that what's next?
I have
Well, you're on this podcast saying it now, dude. So you basically just did what we just talked about, and you put it out. Now
you got to put it on the universe, and you got to do it. And I just got to sit down and
you're fucked. Now you got to write it.
I've had a Western idea for a long, long time where it's just like I know it'll work. I know it'll align with what people haven't seen. Nobody's seen a Western like it, and it's got its own. It's a good idea. I've told it to you.
Yeah, no, I know what it is.
Yeah, it's a good idea, and I gotta really sit down and write that and flesh it out, just put it out there, and not as a vehicle for me, just to do something that try to get something written and out there that I think will work. It'd be nice to be able to make it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to be able to make it.
Well, now you have to at least write it. You're fucked on that part.
But you got to write
that one.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you're kind of hoping I'd talk about or ask, or is there anything you want to ask me or talk about?
I don't know. No, I mean, I would say this. I mean, I don't think I couldn't be more happy where I'm at in my life, and I couldn't be more satisfied right now. I mean, I think everything in life comes right by for a reason. And your path is not set, and every day it's like a pinball machine. In some ways, you kind of get knocked one way and knocked another, and you don't feel like you had a path in front of you, and you kind of got punched a couple of different ways. Whether that be, an injury or a fear of doing something. But in my case, I've really been driving hard over like 20 years, and I just want to work. That's all I want to do. And I just want to audition and get out there and perform. And, in doing that, part of that's driven me to be more of an artist and a writer. And it's hard to do, being that it's something that I feel foreign of. So, but I'm looking forward to it.
I love that, man. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I've loved this talk.
Cool.
But we think we've been on for a little while, and but maybe we can do it again sometime. Maybe we can pick up where we left off at some point. And just so everybody knows, we're gonna make a little attempt to see if we can to sell this thing to Harley.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, we've already.
I'm doing some other things too that I've mentioned before that I'm working on right now. So, long story short, we may work again in a similar capacity, hopefully in the near future. And if that happens, we'll obviously be talking again.
For sure.
Thanks for coming on.
Because it's all about, you've been on to talk about me, but it's about cameras too. You got a lot of stuff in the fires as well. So you're always working hard and
trying.
It's good stuff.
So here's to that happening. Thanks.
For sure.
Seriously, thanks for being on. This has actually been... It's kind of funny we have mics in our hand. It's just been just a cool talk, actually. Just catching up with some whiskeys in your
it's like, it's kind of a unique thing being, doing something like this or a podcast whenever it forces you to sit down and have a good conversation with your friend regardless, even though you've had great conversations with your friend before. You have to just be mindful of it and you can just speak the truth and be heard. That's cool.
I'm going to put all your stuff up. So... in case you don't know, triumphantdisasterblog.com. And this has been Curtis Nelson. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot.
No worries, brother.
So that was Curtis Nelson, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, even though it was fueled with a little bit of scotch. I really liked that talk. And if you did too, and if you like what we're doing here, if you could just take a second, and I'm going to keep saying this at the end of every episode, to just do like even a one-line rating and review on iTunes. It'll really help a lot. As of the last time I looked, I think we had like 13. We're a pretty new show here, but I think we had like 13 ratings and reviews, which is not a lot. And I'd like to get 100 if I can. So I'm not asking a lot. I'm just asking if you could just go on there and say, hey, I like the show, whatever you feel about it, give you a rating review, and it'll just help Apple to promote the show and keep us going. And if you do like it a lot, there's also a little button on the Triumph and Disaster blog, every single one of them on the bottom for PayPal. I do this thing on my own time, on my own dime. And so if you want to donate a little bit there, I'd really appreciate it. We're going to have some really, really cool guests coming up. I'm not going to say who they are. And it looks like we might have a continuing 2 or 3 part, or maybe even more series with Tony Kaye, the director of American History X. A lot of people got a lot of feedback from that. A lot of people love that one. And a couple more great people, like I mentioned before. So make sure to subscribe on iTunes or on YouTube or wherever so you don't miss anything. And thanks for listening to Triumph and Disaster. We'll see you next time.